Welcome to the Beyond the Numbers podcast. Before we dive into this episode, we want to share an important disclaimer regarding the content of our discussions.
Right, we'd like to introduce our new LiveSmart financial planning podcast. This is the first of a series podcasts that we intend to give clients and anybody really via social media an insight into the backdrop of a financial planning business, rather than where everybody just sees the marketing side and the advisor side. I've got Tasha Roger on my first podcast. Tasha, you're going to be talking a bit about your entrance into the industry, your career previous to coming to work within financial planning. Where would you like to start?
I think probably right from the beginning.
Let's go back to the right at the beginning. So, what do you want to do? Are you going as far back as school, or are you going to go where you were
No,
just?
maybe just when you and I first met would be a good starting point and how that came about. So, originally I am a human resource manager,
Mhm.
and I was conducting human resource management for a financial planning company in Scotland that then became a partnership. And when a move occurred, I came with you and ended up doing the human resource management for LiveSmart Planning. And over the years, that has evolved into less from human resource management and more into compliance, and day-to-day operations and running of LiveSmart Financial Planning.
Do you think? Do you think it was an intentional thing that you've sort of stayed in financial planning from your previous job experience, or do you think it was you were sort of drawn to it? So it wasn't, like more of a conscious decision on the back of certain actions, or
I think that in comparison to a lot of sectors and the way in which financial advice firms work,
hmm,
I have found that to be a lot more passionate. I've really enjoyed the work of the financial sector. I am very kind of data driven, as you know. There is a lot of the pragmatic side of human resource management that ties really nicely into compliance. And I
hmm,
think it's just always complemented how my brain works, what I could bring to the firm, and essentially have that client and employee organizational duty of care. It's just always really complemented my background in my human resource management that it organically fell into compliance. So I think it was the sector itself, and the work that we do, but I also think it's the people that we've been working with, our relationship, our working relationship, and the other team members that have come with us through this journey, is ultimately what's kept me coming back.
it's strange, really, isn't it? When you think back from when we first met, a lot of that was sort of accidental in many ways. There wasn't really any intention behind it. And it wasn't really until we probably got into the Live Smart chapter that the intention, started to come, and then it started to almost, some of it was obviously really planned structure,
Yeah.
and some of it was actually, let's face it, a mixture of fighting fires and improvisation. It was effectively at the start, as a startup, wasn't it, really, in terms of how it felt, even though we had a number of clients already and a few businesses merging and a few businesses purchased. It was a car crash, really, wasn't it, at the start?
Yeah. And I think that whilst we face a lot of negatives to get where we are now, there's always been the positives of the team members that we have and the people that we've worked with, is that we've always wanted to drive towards the same ultimate goal of essentially what Live Smart Financial Planning stands for. And having that ethos and values that our clients do come first, and that financial planning should not be complicated, and that we totally recognize the knowledge gap that is currently occurring in society. And we're trying to fight and figure out how the advice that we give is going to bridge that gap, which I love. I love that innovation. And I love working with you and the team on how we're going to tackle that and looking at different ways that we can do it that are different so that people think, oh, actually, they get it and we understand it and we live and breathe it.
I mean, it just shows as well, and you're probably more, you might be more aware of this because of your HR side. But when you look at personalities, and some personalities really together, you think should they work? Sometimes the more opposite they are, the more they work. And when you look at me and you personalities, we are so very different. Some of it good and some of it bad. Some of it causes issues, and you realize sometimes you need the issues. Where I think some businesses, some people focus too much on just constant peace. I think
Yeah.
if you've got too much peace, it doesn't always sort some of the things out, does it? Because you need like a bit of fire.
Yeah. And I think it's
We
having the
definitely have
ability, yeah. I think it's the having the ability to face change in its face when it comes straight up, that we are comfortable with challenging change, but also having that ability to be collaborative in terms of, you know, we are very different in the way that we think about things. I'm very pragmatic and I am very process led, whereas you're not. And we find that that balance sometimes that we are trying to get the same message across from very different directions. But ultimately, the heart of the goal is always the same, which is where we end up
but
sorting it
how,
out.
but how many businesses, not maybe not even just like us, but where there's a scenario where somebody's maybe sales or maybe client facing or client relationships, and then they have to walk that line then with all the people behind doing certain, behind the scenes doing different things to do with process and compliance, and in some businesses health and safety. Like I mean, I speak to a lot of businesses, and you hear like replications of what you've just said in so many different businesses, to the point where we could probably interview like clients who work in certain businesses that are saying similar things.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it just makes you realize as well how it's so, like, how you adapt to it is the challenge, isn't it? It's how you walk that line between process and what you do for the client, and
Yeah.
some of the soft stuff and how you treat staff. And it's not easy, is it?
No. And I don't think that when you're presenting a financial firm to a client, a prospective client, that they truly understand the dynamics of what's going on behind the doors, and what is okay. The front facing advisor is you, and you are the face of Live Smart, but the body and the arms and the legs are everything that gets done in the background. The compliance, the administration, the power planning is ultimately the cogs for you to have the ability to keep doing what you're doing.
Well,
And
I've always had a little bit of discomfort over the fact that at times I get a lot of the really good bits where clients like are grateful, and they give me in a way they give me the love for what we've done, and everything from feeding me to just like referring me to other people and friends, and like the levels of trust is like almost so humbling. But you're always conscious, if you're human, that then how many times do the back office people, who do actually probably 80%, see any of that? Unless I tell them occasionally, but it's often obviously aimed at me, because just like if anyone moans, I get the moan, I also get all the good.
Mhm.
But it's hard, I think, for back office staff at times to stay connected or even be connected
Yeah.
to,
And
to all the good bits that lift you when you're having a
yeah,
bad week.
absolutely. And I do think that your approach, and the approach that we try and instill in the company, is that you have never had an issue to praise the people that have done the work for you to be able to go and present the advice after that initial discussion, who it is that's done the analysis. And I think that
To the client, maybe not to the person. I'm probably not. I'm not and I think this is something we need to consider, but I'm not the best at direct praise, but I give people probably then loads of praise when I'm in, I think partially because I find it quite, I don't like taking credit for other people's stuff. If I'm going to take credit, it's got to be for something that I've done solely and it's all me.
Yeah.
And nothing we do, and I think this is important for any clients that are going to watch this, nothing we do is probably more than 10 to 20% my work. I'd
Yeah.
say it's 80% back office.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of the beauty of our working relationship is that whilst you feel as though you need to be more forthcoming with praise directly to the person, with my background in my human resource skills and training, I'm all about that softer side. I'm all about that kind of making sure everybody feels happy and making sure everybody feels comfortable, and what are we doing to make sure that our team is happy, and I come to you with ideas, and you're like, absolutely, but in that time, in that space, because you are busy and you have a lot going on, and we are essentially a business, we're also trying to have that blended approach that we're all working towards working in a firm that we're really proud of. And it takes two different personalities to be able to catch it all. It's impossible to be able to do
I,
it
I
all.
would say 4 or 5, which we've sort of got, haven't we? But you realise, well, you just need different skill sets, don't you, that do
Yeah.
different things at different times based on what the business needs I mean, you've had to do it, I've had to do it. I think Kaylee's had to do it. She might come on one of these at some point and talk. We've almost had to be different people at different times when the business has needed
Yeah.
different things.
Yeah.
And I think it's vastly changed when you think about it over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
It's like chalk to cheese, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that we do very differently is that we have zero gatekeeping in terms of training and supporting each other. I mean, I do not come from a financial background.
Mm.
And through your support and Kaylee's support and the training that I've had, I'm now, the MLRO for the company. I do all of the reconciliation. I'm the one that pulls the MI data to ensure that we can report to the FCA. And that's information that if you had asked me to do that at the beginning, I would have been a deer in headlights, having no idea. But because you have supported me through that, and you've never ever told me to go off and find something for myself, it's always been a discussion. There's never been, a stupid question that I could come and ask you or Kaylee, and you sit down and be like, no, Tasha, that this is what it is, and this is how you do it. And I think that a lot of our team members really appreciate that, as far as Sanchita as well, coming in through the administration, it's just lovely to have someone that feels safe to be able to ask as many questions as she needs to be able to do her job to the best of her ability. And I think that's really different from a lot of firms.
I mean, I suppose you're probably when you say that, are you slightly reflecting on in your previous employment, it was a completely different sort of attitude, culture, mentality towards things like that, or even your previous working life before that, or are you basing it on, say, what you've seen in some of your HR bits as well?
Yeah, I mean, a huge part of why I ended up in human resources is because I was sick of working for management that ultimately did not care.
Mm.
They would talk the talk and there would be no action. It would be very toxic working environments, and the staff would not have a voice to make any change. And that's essentially why I went into human resource management, so that I would be able to nurture cultures in organizations that were a little bit toxic. Their leadership wasn't exactly great, and just being able to advocate for the employees, but also ensure that the company and the organization was protected, which is the balance of human resource management. And I feel that with compliance, especially with the consumer duty regulation, is so close to human resource values and ethos on our duty of care to protect the client and the business. And it just seems to have been really complemented with my skills coming from human resource management that I've found it really refreshing.
I mean, maybe when you're doing some of your side bits on HR, maybe elements of being in this business and around different people, you've almost maybe even it's shaped that side a little bit in reverse.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes, I mean, everyone you work with, you see really good sides as well as really bad, don't you? Sometimes, because everyone's got different skills in different areas, and then they're not. I mean, you know what I'm bad at, and when they're bad, they're bad. When they're good, they can be almost exceptional.
Hmm.
It's very rare that you see someone that's good at absolutely every part of how you deal with staff, how you manage your business, all that kind of stuff. And I think it's been interesting over the last 5 years because I think we've all, in our own way, probably adapted to sort of what we are good at and started to then, as we've got more confidence, stroke, the job's scaled as well. So it's only been like a matter of no choice. We've sort of got where we're probably just doing what we're good at and we've dropped some of the stuff we're not.
Yeah. And I think that that's going to happen in every organization that has faced the hurdles that we've faced over the years. Um, and it's having the ability, which I do think we have, to actually stop and take scope and say, hang on, something's not right here. How are we going to fix this? What have we maybe dropped the ball on? How can we bring it around? And I think in terms of our duty of care to our clients and our team, I don't think we've ever dropped the ball on that. You know, I have a lot of personal experience on the support from Live Smart Financial Planning, on that personal aspect. That there are situations that happened with me that I don't think I would have come out of in the way that I have in a healthy result had it not been for the support that I received from you guys in Live Smart. I don't think it would have been the same outcome.
I mean, how many times do you have like a moment of anybody or just a staff member have a moment of crisis? And a lot of businesses fail at that point miserably to the point where you almost say it's quite embarrassing to watch.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable.
And I think there's an element of how we are to pat ourselves on the back a little bit, where we almost, in a certain kinds of crisis, I think we almost suddenly forget commercials a little bit. They get to think, right, it's all about the human side. We're a bit like it with clients. I don't know if it's because we like it with clients and it feeds into it. I'm not sure, but obviously, everything else drops off, and it's all about right. Like what do you need now above all else?
Yeah.
And it just seems to have been something that's then started, and then it's almost just got ingrained. I don't think
Mhm.
it's necessarily been like a real. I think we should do it that way kind of policy thing. It's
No,
just
it's never been a let's have a training meeting about how we deal with these scenarios. It's always been very organic based on the human nature of the people that we have in the firm and the way that we handle things. You know, I mean, for being too personal, that so for example, without getting too personal, there was a huge turning point in my life in 2019 when my mum passed away in a car crash. And it was, as always is the way with us, Julian, never simple because she was in a different country and she was in Portugal. And it was a case of I had to just drop tools and go and sort it out and do a lot of the admin. My dad was working in Iraq. And I am and consider myself, you know, my professional integrity is very important for me in terms of making sure that I am always representing the company and making sure that, you know, people can rely on me. And you just stepped in and you reaffirmed that that would never change. You made me feel very comfortable that the fact that I am not coping well with what had happened in the stress because there was a legal court case and, all of the background stress and grief
That,
that happened there.
that wasn't a short-term fix, was it? That went on for, was it like a year?
Yep, yep. It wasn't the stress and the trauma of the process of how it happened, and it was actually you that recognized that I was not coping. And it was you that stepped in and put essentially that duty of care to give me myself the permission to look after myself is what allowed me to come back stronger and heal and, be a better version of myself because you created the space to
I
allow me to
honestly,
grieve.
I can't really, I know it sounds bad, but I can't really remember that. It seems like another lifetime ago. I can't really remember the build up to it, or do you know what I mean? I'm a bit,
Yeah. And I think, I mean, it's going to be 6 years this September, so it's not,
yeah, it's quite a while, yeah.
yesterday. And no, I mean, for me, because I was in it,
Yeah,
um it's easier for me to remember. But I remember having a conversation with you, and we were trying to do a meeting about something, to set something in place. And I just was not myself. And we came off the meeting, and you phoned me, and I just broke down. And I think it's the first time that I've ever had very vulnerable emotion with you because, we've always had that, camaraderie and, we kind of take the mick of each other. And it was a very vulnerable space. And
and
you
I
just
don't do emotion.
yeah, and you just supported me in it, and you were basically the one that was like, I knew it. I knew that you weren't yourself. I could tell the conversations that we've had, how you're holding yourself in the meeting. You need to take more time off. And you did everything. You sorted it, you spoke to everybody, you made the space, and I basically disappeared for I think it was 4 weeks. And you allowed me to do what I needed to come back. Essentially, I think that you portray yourself as being emotionally void, but you're very intuitive. And I,
Yeah,
I, I
I do
don't think
notice
that
stuff.
you pick up on things that others don't know how to express it and articulate yourself, which is where I come in and do it for you.
There is
And,
definitely
and
that.
that's why we work so well together. But it hasn't been easy, and we've faced more hurdles than most. But I think that when we do have things to celebrate, we really do make a point of celebrating it and celebrating it with the team because it's ultimately their hard work that's got us there.
Mm. I mean, it's obviously probably the latest or the more recent part of the story, and maybe even probably a little bit in the middle of it all. It's probably really been about taking quite a lot of staff on that are generally definitely younger than me, probably
Just younger than me.
just about younger than you, and then in some cases at the start of their careers.
Yeah.
Has that made your work more interesting, or has it just made it more stressful?
I think that it has made me feel a deeper responsibility for the work that I do.
Mm,
I have a lot more respect for the industry watching these kind of younger members come in and having the ability to see society and the gaps that are being faced and how we can support them. I think is really important. We've discussed what we eventually want to see for Live Smart and having that kind of education and academy and have the ability to have younger generations come into the business and succeed and become advisors as we get older and perhaps start to move out the business. I have such a huge respect for the ability that we have to share information. I find even with human resource management that there's so much gatekeeping, and I feel as though there are very few people that I've met professionally, you being one of them, that is so willing to almost reveal industry secrets to make sure that these younger generations are successful.
But I can tell you where that comes from. So part of the way I am is because so obviously I've been in the industry since I was 20. So I spoke to people all my life that are by the nature of what we do, you tend to speak to people that in some form are successful enough to say I've got some money to invest, or I've got a business to grow, or a business to sell, or I'm paying this tax, that tax, whatever tax. And by the nature of that, you obviously speak to people about the business, and then it leads to things like comments from them about staff. And the comment that people have always said to me is, "Oh, don't ever have staff. Staff are a nightmare. They always want this. They always want more. If you don't pay them top dollar, they leave. If you give them anything, they take what you give them and they go." It's just constant. And you know what I'm like. If somebody says negative things, it's like some people are probably a bit put off. For me, it almost makes me want the aggro more.
Yeah, you do kind of say challenge accepted. I'm going to change this perspective. You do like to challenge negative connotations
And a
to
little bit
me.
of the norm. It's
Yeah.
like a rebellious streak that means that I
Yeah.
think, right, I think I can do it different.
Yes.
So I think elements of what you've just said have come on the back of that because I think when you see how everybody else manages, not just younger people, but staff in general, a lot of people, and I know it's evolved probably in the last few years actually, because it's had to with COVID changed quite a lot of mentality
Yeah.
because obviously people are working from home and some people really embraced it and I think they've seen the benefit. Other people are still fighting it and questioning it and
Hmm.
are people doing this? And I mean, I know people that have got things that make the mouse twitch, so they still like look like they're at the desk and things like that. You just think, you know what? If one of our staff had that, I'd be like, we can chuck that in the bin because you're
Hmm.
not monitored to that degree. And if ever we're monitored to that degree, we deserve to have you twitching a mouse while you go and make a cup of tea or something because
Yeah.
it's a joke. It's like you can't expect people to trust you as an employer if you don't give them absolute trust. And I think a lot of it's come about because of that. And then I know from my own, based on my own personality traits, that if somebody manages me or micromanages me, I absolutely detest it. It makes me worse, more likely to be horrible. I just don't enjoy being monitored in that way.
Yeah.
Mind being monitored, and I don't mind, think people looking at what I'm doing. But when I mean, I kind of sort of go back to the olden days, like maybe 20 years ago, I can remember people having to report every day what they'd done
Yep.
manually.
Yep.
And they're like, we spend more time reporting than we do actually selling anything, in terms of when it was sales. And I've seen this with other sales jobs as well.
Yeah.
I just thought there's got to be a different way of doing it.
And the unfortunate part of that is that you're saying this is 20 years ago. It still happens now in some industries.
I,
And I think it stifles
blows my mind.
production and collaboration and innovation. I think that all you're going to do with micromanagement is kill talent, which is why we don't do it.
There's one other thing though that's always been said, and this is more a financial services thing. I would say whenever you spoke, bear in mind, I've always, up until probably now, I've always been one of the younger people in the industry. So I always had people older in different roles, above me the wrong word, but like managing or in a position of compliance or something. And they talk about younger people quite derogatory, where like there's some kind of liability.
Yeah.
And again, you think, in one sense, you can see elements of what we've done where we've actually tried to go the other way. And what you realize is it requires a massively different style of management and a
Hmm.
different approach. And actually, I think you've got to be less old so they can relate to you more.
Yeah.
And other than that, I think what I see from a lot of the younger people that I've either spoken to in other companies as well. There's other people in other companies I speak to that aren't necessarily coming to work for us. And then people that do work for us that you just think that they've actually got, I think, more academic ability. I think the work ethic that apparently that generation of younger people have not got, I've not seen that. I've in some ways seen a drive and in some ways more
Yeah.
and a bit more substance to it as well. It's not just about money, it's actually they want a certain life.
Yeah. And I think as well that our mentality is never been, no, they're too young, give them a couple of years. It's always been, if you've got the drive and you've got the ability to push yourself, it doesn't matter what age you are coming into the industry. If you are tenacious and you're happy to kind of go with our procedures and our policies and the compliance alongside making sure that how they're practicing and the advice that they're giving is within regulation, we're all for it. We have no pushback.
But I think they've given us something else. I think some of the younger staff have given us an extension of that side, that like ethical, idealistic, slightly
Yeah.
uh, push for something different. And if you think about how it's sort of lent in then subsequently to the financial planning side and how I maybe deal with clients, I think it's gradually softened it a bit and then made it a little bit more. I don't like this phrasing, but like more new age financial planning rather than old school wealth management. Bearing in
Advice.
mind,
Yeah.
my background is massively wealth management.
Yeah.
And there was elements weirdly then I don't like about wealth management that as the new age stuff's come in, you think, well, if you can mix the good and the bad together, sorry,
Yeah.
the good and the good together and then strip the bad out, I think we're running like that now.
Yeah. I think we have managed to strike a balance through the practices that you have done for years and have always pushed against, and also the new ideals that our younger members have brought in and said, well, it doesn't really go that way anymore. Maybe we could try and, change about how we're doing this approach, and to have someone turn around and go, yeah, I'm listening, instead of going, no, this is how we've always done it, is potentially why the culture and the model that we are nurturing is working for us, and it's why the clients like it.
Yeah, definitely. But I think it's interesting. People talk about culture a lot, and it always to me sounds to me, or it definitely in the past has been a bit sort of. People talk a lot, but you think actually when you get to the substance of it, oh, it's not really there. It's just words.
Yep.
And I think the difference is with us, we've never really used the buzzwords about it as such, but it's actually come from the other side. And then we've almost started using the words on the back of the actions a little bit because it's in the
Yep.
business.
Yeah.
And I think it's been interesting as it's evolved how some of the client relationships have then evolved on the back of it.
Yeah.
So, what do you think are going to be the next steps for Live Smart, Tash? If you were guessing now over the next, based on where we're at now, and then based on some of the plans that we've discussed, albeit probably not so much in the last few months, what can you see in the next couple of years?
I would like to see a continuation of what's really kind of come to fruition this year with our approach of a newer generation of advisor. I would like to see you working less and get your work-life balance better.
Or just
You
have
are tenacious, and I do feel that having the ability to build a team that are upcoming generations that you are comfortable with and going through that training with is what will allow you to alleviate that pressure So my biggest goal is to ensure that we have a strong team that are able to kind of carry the torch for us getting older. I want to continue the journey that we're on with empowering our clients in financial advice. And I think the third thing that I'm really excited for with conversations with the younger generation in our team is bridging the knowledge gap and seeing what we can do as a firm to break the barriers of education in the generations leaving school at the moment. So that's kind of where I'm looking towards the future for Live Smart, is that we are giving financial advice that is totally bespoke to your individual needs and goals and your lifestyle, and continue that, support the younger generations and bridge the gap in education. That's my three ultimate direction for the company.
I mean, to pick one of those points, you've hit upon the point that nearly every business, very often many financial planning businesses have, which is the reliance on one or a number of people and no succession plan.
Yeah.
And that in some ways is where we're at now, where I think we're on the next 5 years-ish are going to be a transitional phase to where if I can't let go a little bit of some things, which I'm more than prepared to do, but like you say, it's finding the right people to let go to
Yep.
and work with them. They're not working for you as well, that's not the easiest thing
Yeah.
in our industry anyway, because just of how it tends to be. It's going to be an interesting one, isn't it? Because if I mean I've made a lot of changes, but that's probably going to be one of the larger changes because I don't think in my entire life I have ever really not worked more than an average amount of hours. And then, people say, well, you're not efficient if you work a lot of hours. I wouldn't say that's true necessarily of
Yeah.
me. I would say it's one of those where I fill the hours like I'm almost on a 9 to 5, but I do it over 14 hours instead of whatever the other is.
Yeah.
And it's tricky. And
Yeah. And you wear a lot of hats. You're not.
less now probably than I have.
Yeah. But I do think that the way that we build the relationships with our clients is not your typical advisor client relationship, that if they're looking to access their pots and things, like they'll phone their financial advisor. I feel that we run deeper than that, and I think that that is the integrity of the relationships you have built with those clients, which is hard to teach and pass down.
I think it's partly personality led. I
Mm.
don't think it's something I don't even think it's a skill. I think it's just massively around sort of strong aspects of my personality, to be
Yeah.
fair. But I think it's something that if you can get people to see it and then they can replicate elements of it, I think instead of having a client business relationship, you end up with a personal relationship that then evolves over the years, like any relationship should, that's going to
Yeah.
improve. And it's not always about completely agreeing or getting on. Sometimes you've got to have a little bit of conflict in there
Hmm.
and be comfortable having a bit of a disagreement on something.
Yeah.
And as you know, I mean, we do that with clients.
Yep.
We say that you've got something to say it.
Yep.
And as long as you understand that if I'm not happy with what you said, I'm going to pull it back. And then it becomes a debate, doesn't it? Not me
Yeah.
telling a client what to do.
Yeah, a collaboration.
And it seems to flow same into staff. Like, you don't really want. I've always said it to you. You don't want someone really being scared of you to the point where they can't say what they want to say when there's a burning issue, or
Yep.
actually being frightened to offend you. You don't really. Why do people take offense? I mean, it's such a pointless thing, isn't it? Like, it's just someone's opinion
Yeah.
on something you do or the way you do it. where you're like, why do you have to do it this way? Because it's really annoying me. Or
Yeah. And I think a huge aspect that people miss about financial advice is that a lot of it comes down to psychological safety, because having a conversation with clients about money is that, for want of a different word, it can be quite intimate. Your finances can, people hold their finances quite close to their bodies. It's not something that people are always willing to want to discuss. If they have debt, there's shame associated with that. And I think it's being able to have that conversation with someone that you're not here to judge them on anything like that. Your job is to help them and to build that trust and rapport that they turn around and can phone you when they're having a crisis, that you are able to sit down and say, okay, how are we going to fix this? And I think that there is definitely a fine line between having that trust and psychological safety and intimidation. And if you don't get that quite right, as you said, people will not open up to you when they really need you. And I think that's really important.
I mean, if anyone's ever going to overstep the confrontational line, it's possibly me. And it's strange, isn't it? I don't. It's very rare that I would do that in a client scenario.
Hmm.
In a staff situation, I could,
Yeah.
but it's strange, isn't it? Like how you behave differently in certain situations, or with certain people. Yet you're not doing it really even consciously.
No.
But I
And
know in a client side, you can't. There's a definite boundary where you can't
yeah,
step beyond.
there's kind of professional realms that you can't
It,
step over.
if nothing else, it's that old thing, and I think I learned this when I was like really young, where so I think someone once said to me, "You might win the argument, but you don't really win the battle." And I think sometimes with a client, that's always been ingrained into me. I don't think it has been with staff. Hence, sometimes, as you well know, it's like if I've got a strong feeling about something, I don't always let go quick enough. And the thing, it's interesting, isn't it? How you don't always follow the same principles for different situations.
Yeah, no comment.
True though. True
I
story.
mean, I think that I don't want to say I've grown old working with you, but I came into working with you in my young 30s.
I would say you've changed quite a lot.
I mean, I'm now closer to my 40s than I want to be, but I do feel as though you have witnessed a lot of growing up in
Yeah.
terms of where I started and where I am now. And we have had some hard-hitting conversations over the years in terms of where I see something on a compliance pragmatic process, and you have seen it based on an experience and having seen something fail from experience. And because I didn't have that experience, we've ended up having very lovely conversations around that.
But I think, to be honest, I've never been shy to tell you when I thought you were out of your depth on
Yeah,
something. And I think possibly at the time, and this is not me trying to sound right, but at the time I think I was right on some of them. And then I think on some of them I was probably too harsh with hindsight. But it doesn't do you any harm, does it? In some ways, it does make you. I think sometimes if someone makes you doubt yourself, it can be a bad thing if it strips all the confidence away. But if someone makes you doubt yourself for the right reasons, you sort of learn more from that than you do like all the nicey conversations where
yeah,
someone's patting you on the back. And I know I've always probably wanted that myself. Even from clients, if a client's harsh with me, I learn more from that than if a client's like giving me compliments and telling me how good I am.
yeah,
And I think it's the power of criticism, isn't it? If it's the right kind of criticism,
yeah, constructive.
even at times, and I know sometimes people, anybody doesn't always think it's constructive, but I know from my point of view, it's rare that I'm not constructive when I pull something apart, but I
Yeah.
think sometimes I'm just a bit too harsh.
Yeah. And I do think as well that whilst you might not openly admit it, that working with me and working alongside Kaylee, that your knife's edge, harsh persona has softened a little over the years. I think
Honestly,
through
definitely with people
pure
that were,
force.
I think, it's had to with people in the business
Yeah,
because you realise it's sort of counterproductive for them as well as for me.
yeah,
I think in one sense, there's elements of how I deal with clients that's then crept into the staff side a little bit because, as you know, over the last 5 years, I'm constantly quoting psychology, and I think because I've become less wealth management, a little bit more human in terms of what the way we talk and how we
yeah,
interact, I think it's crept into staff side a little bit.
yeah. And I think that is probably the complement of the deep-rooted respect that we all have for each other, is that we do make space for these differences in opinion and these differences in approach, not from a, well, that's how they do it, more of a, oh, could I maybe bring this into how I do it? Is there something that I could do different? And I've learned a lot from you over the years in terms of, I came in thinking that the FCA was the law, and I was very hard hitting on a lot of compliance, and I would not give any wiggle room to anybody. And anytime you challenged me on it, I was totally resistant. And as
You,
I matured and
I
come
was,
through it and had more experience with the regulation and the FCA and their prescriptive kind of interpretation, a lot of the things that you and I have come to loggerheads with has actually made me realize that there is wiggle room. And that was really hard for me, as you know.
yeah, it is. I think I think the FCA are not, they're a little bit misunderstood by many people because I suppose if you look at the structure of financial services businesses, if you look at network level, the network's like, no, you've got to do this. When obviously the network's in a different kind of, because they've got the responsibility of hundreds or
Yeah.
thousands.
Yeah.
And I think then you get firms, like your SJPs and your type people where their staff have got to comply to their ways and product style and fees structures and all that, and then they push it. So it almost comes over like a rule book, kind of, a bit more rule book. And I think I've always sort of had the attitude that probably a bit like less like it's not like HMRC where HMRC are hard fast. They can quite happily come in and say you've broken the rules, prove your innocence. The FCA aren't really like that. They're a little bit more collaborative unless you've genuinely overstepped the mark.
Yes.
And I don't think people think of them as collaborative. I think they think of them as HMRC.
Yeah, and I do think that that is essentially, and coming from a human resources employment law background where it was if you messed up, there were consequences. It was breaking that mold for me. And it took a long time of a couple of years of resistance and quite heated conversations with you about where I was and the pragmatic approach that I had and your industry understanding through experience. I think it took a lot for both of us to meet each other in the middle, that I have been able to mature and kind of move away from that, I suppose, naive understanding. But that's all through experience of working with the FCA, working with you and doing the work to understand how the cogs move and what is expected. And I love it. I mean, I love it, as you know. I'm a proper geek for it.
But as you
Um,
well know as well, to bring someone around, not far off full circle in that way, you've got to create something else for them to respect. And if you don't, you're never going to be able to turn someone's sort of standpoints around, values around a little bit, as well as give them the degree of trust where they actually even believe what you're saying to come around themselves. And that's when you realize you've got to be so conscious. And this is the client side creeping into the staff side, I would say. You've got to be so conscious of how, and in every sentence that you say, how you come over to different people.
Yeah.
Because those little, like those odd sentences where you can let yourself down by, like, you stress, you lose your temper, or you're a bit short. They're the undoing of all the good bits.
Yeah.
People focus, but some people particularly focus really harshly on the negative.
Yeah. And I do think that we have a really good adaptability in our communication styles depending on who we're dealing with and what we're discussing.
It's definitely evolved.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's from working together in terms of learning from each other. And I mean, I think we've come really far in the past. Well, we're coming on 9 years this year.
Yeah, it's massively like different to nine. Go back 5 years even. It's completely different.
Yeah.
But I think it's like a mixture of all things together, isn't it? Coming
Mm-hmm.
together.
Yeah.
And I think you learn off each other, you adapt, you react to things that are going on. Maybe it's a bit less stressful now as well than it was
Yeah.
in a few years ago.
Yeah.
It's I know there's stressors, but it's a lot more easygoing, a bit more
Yeah,
pleasant.
it's the kind of expected day-to-day stresses of running a business and having a firm and a team, rather than the level and depths of stress that we were in a few years ago and building up from that and, letting it go essentially to move forward and create something much more positive, which I really feel we're getting there, especially with the team that we've got now. The ability that we have to work together, support each other, all hands on deck whenever it's needed, that nothing's ever a problem. It's just a really lovely culture and just team spirit. I know it's a bit cringe and people like team spirit, but it
Yeah,
is. We're all there for each other because we all want the same thing, which is very rare.
yeah, definitely.
And it's not just a case of, we close the doors at 5 and that's it. We don't talk to each other. I've got kids, you've got kids, you've come to see me, I'm coming down to see you, it's more than just work for us, and we live and breathe what we're trying to preach through the firm.
Yeah, I mean you're in each other's lives, aren't you? It's
Mm.
not. I know we don't get loads of time, so it's not like we're in each other's lives every week. So we're all over the country.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's another point. I don't know that many firms that manage to make all over the country
Work.
work
Yeah.
that well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's like for us, even before COVID came into play, we were a remote model, really.
Hmm.
Before it was even a thing.
Yeah. I mean, people are amazed that I was already set up from working from home full time
Mm.
remotely prior to go like COVID. Everybody was rushing to get desks, and I already had mine all set up after moving into the new house because that was just our way of working.
But we didn't even
Um,
have any equipment to buy, did we?
no,
Really?
no, we were all
Maybe the
set up.
webcam for some people.
Yeah.
Yeah, just mad.
Yeah.
So do you want to leave it there, Tash, or should we have we got anything else?
I
What's
would
this?
love to ask you where you see the company in 5 years in terms of what we're doing and where we're going. And
Do you want to save that for my interview?
am I going to interview you? Am
It might be wise, yeah. Otherwise, we'll probably make this so long that no one wants to listen to the end,
I?
and they won't listen to the answer then.
We could be a sleep podcast, our dulcet tones. No, that's perfect.